We're told a lot of stories about money, particularly when we were children. We were told things like money doesn't grow on trees, or money's the root of all evil, or money won't buy you happiness. Today, I'm going to have a chat with Mark Creedon, founder of Mastermind Business Accelerator and CEO of the Metropole Group, about that age-old question, does money buy happiness? Now, I've been around the block a few times and I've had my fair share of challenges. I've had good times and bad times, and I definitely have my views, which I'm going to share with you today. Now, I know you're probably here to learn about property investment success and money, and while today we won't be talking specifically about property, I'm sure you're going to get some benefit in the areas of success and money in my chat with Mark Creedon. So let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Does money buy happiness? Now, I bet you've heard somebody say money can't buy happiness. Now, sometimes they say this in the context of complaining about, ugly, greedy, wealthy property investors. They paint the image of wealthy people, but who lead joyless lives. Well, today I'm going to have a chat with Mark Creedon, founder of Mastermind Business Accelerator and CEO of the Metropole Property Group of companies, and I plan to dig a bit deeper and try and strike a balance, find out what's really going on about money. In my mind, money is incredibly important in areas where it's important and not at all important where it's not. Now, I've often said any problem money can solve isn't really a problem, is it? That said, there are still lots of things money can't buy, so I'm looking forward to a fun discussion. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, Michael. This is going to be good.
Yeah. Look, you've no doubt heard the saying that money can't buy happiness. And I don't know, you've probably heard it from grandparents, parents, family members. But even more likely, I think, Mark, the people that say that are probably ones that are poor, that are struggling financially, and they use it as a sort of a confirmation that they're okay, they shouldn't be striving.
Yeah, I think certainly if I look back at the times when I heard it most, Michael, was from my parents when they were going through financially difficult times. And it was almost this justification. Oh, it's tough, but it's okay because money doesn't buy happiness anyway.
Well, our good friend Tom Corley, in his 5-year-long Rich Habits study, that's one of the things he looked at. And interestingly, Tom found that 82% of wealthy people were happy, while 98% of poor people were unhappy. That's an interesting statistic, but he's a very analytical person. I guess it also depends what questions you ask, Mark, and what your definition of happiness is.
Yeah, if you look at those things that came from Tom, though, Michael, I think that there's a whole bunch of stats around it. I guess the thing that I found, the two things that I found really interesting is he said 93% of the wealthy were happy because they liked or loved what they did for a living, while 85% of the poor were unhappy. But the other one is 0% of the wealthy people were unhappy due to finances, whilst 98% of the poor people were.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because we read a lot about the fact that one of the biggest arguments people have, and I know a lot of the challenges people are having at the moment too, is related to finance. But Tom also found that money problems have a ripple effect on other areas of your life, so that if you are short of money at the moment, then it can lead to an overall sense of unhappiness, but it also tends to lead to stress and to health issues. Now, you deal with a lot of business people. Now, you're the CEO of the Metropole Group of companies, I don't know how you manage 2 jobs, but you look after, as mentor, as a coach to a lot of successful business people in Mastermind Business Accelerator. And I think we've seen that stress is one of the challenges that successful people have if they're not careful.
Yeah, well, Michael, interestingly, you talk about 2 jobs. They're actually not that dissimilar because what we do in Mastermind applies in the Metropole Group as well. But you're right. I often say to my kids in their personal relationships, if I look around and I think about the fights that I've had with partners over the years, or, I see stress and communication issues within people within business, it's often about money or a money-related issue, isn't it, Michael?
Yes, it is. I think also as a parent, and now both you and I are grandparents, most parents would agree that if their kids are doing well in life, it does make them happy. But when they're struggling financially, struggling with their jobs, it does make them unhappy. So there is a link between money and happiness, isn't there?
Oh, there is. And I think I've shared this with you too. I think the other saying that I really like, Michael, is you're only as happy as your unhappiest child.
Yes. So when somebody says money doesn't buy happiness, in fact, I think they're wrong. Now, I'm not saying that money's going to solve all your problems, but as I said a moment ago, any problem money can solve isn't really a problem when you have money. So I know there's been lots of studies done about this, and I've looked at it, you've looked at it, we've written about it. So first of all, let's discuss what money can't buy, because, money can't buy everything. Can it buy happiness or can't it? Sure. Buying things like instant gratification, that helps you, especially when you can purchase items so easily nowadays online. You can get them quickly, you can get them through Uber, you can get them delivered to your door through DoorDash. But sometimes I think we confuse this instant hit, this dopamine rush with happiness. It doesn't last.
No, it doesn't. And I'll go one step further on a bit of a limb, Michael. I think that sometimes when you've spent, big money, so doing something to make you happy, so whether it's your wedding or a lifetime holiday, it's actually the moments that cost nothing at all that stay with you once the credit card's been paid off. Or, if I look back at, for me, my daughter's wedding, getting to dance with Samantha as a new bride, or watching the kids' faces light up the first time they see snow or something like that. They're the treasured moments. Life, I think, is made up of those moments, and money doesn't buy those.
So what we're saying is that money can't buy happiness. It gets you this instant gratification. Now, I just remember the days of being locked down in COVID, where it's interesting, in Melbourne when we were locked down for so long, lots of people shopped online. And it was interesting. It changed the way we did things, but it also did give that quick dopamine rush. So I think we've got to be careful about what's going on. Look, the other thing money can't buy is wisdom. Sure, you may be able to buy a university degree or attend fancy conferences or do other stuff, but that's actually different. Knowledge is very different to wisdom, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Some of the most brilliant and passionate people you'll meet are those people who've studied, but not at Harvard, not at Oxford, but sometimes at the University of Life. I remember doing a prac session, Michael, when I did my psychology degree, and at the end of it, the professor came up and said to me, Mark, where did you get that from? Because, that's not in the curriculum. Like, it's very good. And I just turned around and said, I've actually got it from the School of Life. It's stuff that I'd learnt over the years. So I think sometimes that knowledge it's about so much more than lectures and textbooks.
It is. So we're working on, at the moment, what money can't buy before we talk about what money can buy. And it can't buy happiness, even though it gives short-term happiness, can't buy wisdom. And I think we've realised just over the last years ourselves, Mark, as we've had a couple of friends who've had some health problems, can't buy good health, can it?
No, can't keep you alive indefinitely. Although I did see the other day that there's a cryogenic lab that's opened up somewhere in Australia, Michael, where you can get yourself frozen and you can come back in many years to come. But I think that the real issue is that people often sort of work themselves into the ground, and it's in the pursuit of money at the expense of their own well-being. And that's kind of really missing the point, isn't it?
Well, interestingly, I just a short while ago spoke to a client of ours, Metropole, and also who's done really, really well in his business and had you as a business coach, the same coach I share, you. And we explained how he had a car accident earlier this year, a very serious car accident, and it's totally changed his attitude. He was working very long hours, very hard hours, and suddenly wondered, what's it all about? I've got 2 young kids. So money can't buy you health, but it actually can get you the ability to look after your health by buying gym memberships and looking after yourself in other ways. It can't buy friendship. Now, that's really interesting because I know one of the challenges people have got, they say, I don't want to get a lot of money because if I do, I won't know who my friends really are, whether they like me just for money. That's a fallacious argument in my mind. But no, you actually want people who are going to be there through the thick and thin, not just because you won the lottery.
No, it's funny. You hear people who win the lottery and suddenly long lost friends and distant family members, and the kid that lived 3 doors down when they were in high school all suddenly come out of the woodwork You and I both know that's not genuine friendship. I remember my father always used to say, Michael, that you'll be able to count your true friends on one hand, and one of those will probably be your spouse or your partner. And at the time, I used to think maybe he thought that because he was just a bit jaded. But the older I get, the more I realise he was right.
That's actually fascinating, because my mum used to say to me, you won't have many friends. You got lots of acquaintances, not many friends. And I didn't understand that until later on in life, and she was very right. And when things go wrong, that's when you find who your friends really are. We're going through the list of what money can't buy. Now, this isn't meant to be a negative chat, because we're going to talk, I hope, in a minute about lots of good stuff about having money. But let's be realistic and putting a balance on things. It can't buy you respect, like friendship. Respect's something that's earned. It's not transferable for money.
Oh, that's right. I mean, you and I have both know wealthy people that we probably would have little respect for. Michael, I was in the Sydney office of Metropole last week. And one of the team members there, as we were getting out of the lift, he said to me, oh, no, you first, you're the CEO. I have to give you that respect. And I said to him, having a label, having a title, like having money, is not what earns respect. You actually have to earn respect. It doesn't come automatically with money. So I think that is absolutely the case.
That's a good point. And okay, for those of us, the romantics, money can't really buy love, can it? I mean, look at the movie stars, look at the sports people, look at other rich celebrities. Most of them don't have good long-term relationships, do they?
No, they don't. And unfortunately, I've seen people that, Michael, you look at, if you think about the people that we've known over time that have lots of relationships, that have been married several times, they're often very wealthy. I remember a very good friend of mine years ago was an extremely wealthy man. He'd been married 5 times. Unfortunately, he kept finding people that loved him.
Interesting. I think I've told you the story before of my neighbour across the road, who's a very wealthy man and runs a very big national business. And his wife left him a number of years ago. They divorced. And 10 years ago, they remarried. Very unusual, but she came back to John for the second time. And we weren't invited to the wedding. We didn't know them well then. And apparently she said, I took him for half his money last time. I've come back for the second half now. But they're very happy second time round, which is actually very unusual. So I'm not sure if she did really come back for the money in this particular case. They're a lovely couple. Look, while there's plenty of research out there on whether money does indeed buy happiness, there's evidence on both sides of the argument. The secret is that true happiness really doesn't come from money or things money buys, but it actually comes from connections, but I think also from experiences,
yes,
rather than material goods.
Yeah, it goes back to what we said before, isn't it? That it's the moments that matter. But I guess that the big thing there, Michael, is just that we have to keep in mind. There's also lots of research that shows that people on the lower end of the income scale, unfortunately, are vulnerable to mental health issues and like depression and other issues, unfortunately.
Yes, there's actually been a lot of scientific work and research done into this. So it's probably worth just having a quick look at that, because I know you've made some homework and some notes in here, and it shows that money does indeed play a role in making people happier. Maybe you can go through some of those things that scientific research showed.
Well, I think one of the things it shows, Michael, is that your children's brains will benefit. So, yeah, there's a growing body of evidence supporting the idea that growing up in poverty can have long-term impact on children's cognitive development. And children children who've had to endure something called toxic stress are shown to have actually chemically altered their brains.
Interesting. I know there's been a lot of study into this, and it actually sort of makes sense what you're saying. And you mentioned a while ago that, in fact, you're less likely to experience depression if you've got money. I guess in reverse, you're more likely to experience depression, which is a challenge with all that's going on in the world at the moment, if you have money problems.
Yeah, that's right. There was a Gallup poll done a few years ago, Michael. I think it said about 30% of poor people said that they've been diagnosed with depression at some point, compared to some 15%. So
about half as
based
many.
on that, half as many. Yeah.
Who are not in poverty. That's interesting. So we're looking at some of the scientific evidence that showed that money can make you happier. Now, again, before people say, oh, these ugly, greedy old guys, we're not saying rape, rob and pillage people to get wealthy. We're saying that the pursuit of success, the pursuit of being a successful business person, entrepreneur or property investor for the right reasons is something you should pursue. To go into property or money, a business just for the money isn't enough, but it's what money can bring. And as we're starting to say, there's a number of reasons why. And the scientific studies also showed that it can help you enjoy life. You can savor your life.
Well, it makes sense if you think about it, because those people who are struggling, living paycheck to paycheck, and can I just say here, Michael, I think it's a really important point. You and I have both been there.
Oh, yes.
Do you know?
Lost
you
it
and I
all.
have both been
Lost it all.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been in situations where I've had to empty the ashtray in the car to find coins to buy the kids' milk. So,
did you smoke in the old days?
No, but that was where I used to keep coins.
Oh, okay.
I'd rummage through coins, and that was when you used to have coins so you could pay the toll when you're going over the bridge.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're not focusing on trying to meet the daily basic needs, then it gives you the opportunity to start thinking about experiences. And in fact, there was an article in the Scientific American that concluded that a person's ability to savor experiences actually predicts their degree of happiness. So it kind of makes sense. And I guess the other thing too, Michael, is that birds of a feather flock together. So, often happy people associate with other happy people. And if you're not worrying about how you're going to meet the basic needs of life, you've probably got more opportunity to go out and do that.
Sure. So as scientific evidence or research has shown, money can help you be happier because it can also help you buy valuable experiences. It's not just the stuff, even though coming home in my Bentley is actually really nice, but it actually allows you to enjoy the experience. And I know you and I both at the end of the day work out what we're grateful for. And when we think about what we're grateful for at the end of the day, it's not the car and it's not the next deal. It's actually the experiences. In many ways for you and me, it's time with our kids, with our grandkids, with people we love.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's the ability to know that you can take the time to do that. We're actually taking two of our grandsons whale watching weekend after next. And the ability to know that I can afford to do that. And I don't have to worry about whether I need to budget for that. It's a privilege, Michael.
Well, the other thing that science has shown is that money makes you happier because you can spend money on others. We do that in various ways. We help our kids, we help our grandkids. The Metropole team is running another charity ball, this time in Brisbane, helping Hummingbird House, which is a hospice for terminal children. So it's fantastic to be able to spend money on others, to help others. And the last thing in the list I just want to quickly go through that science has shown where money can help you is you're less likely to be lonely when you've got some money in your pocket.
Yeah, and I mean, we can talk about scientific research, but I think we all know that people with sort of meaningful social connections generally are more happier. But there's lots of evidence to show that people with less money are more likely to be lonely. So they don't have the opportunity to venture out, to mix with people. They can't afford to go and, where other people are. And that becomes a little bit of a downward spiral.
Well, so when I look back at that list, Mark, and I think, well, what has money bought for me, allowed me to do? I think it's given me lots of adventures, and that's great. We've had that fantastic overseas trip for my 70th birthday to Israel. We've been to Morocco. I've seen safaris. I've been to Antarctica and seen the penguins. And they're the things I remember. So it's given me adventures. What about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, lots of adventures, opportunities to travel, opportunities. I'm heading off on a little trip next year. As you know, I've been planning that to celebrate my 60th birthday. So heading off and doing a bit of a Beatles tour because I'm a Beatles tragic. Paul McCartney tickets came on sale the other day. Caroline was able to jump on it and buy those tickets immediately. It's those little adventure things. And it gets back to what we said before about moments. The other thing too, Michael, is the ability to look after our health. The fact that we can seek the best healthcare, the fact that we can afford to go to the gym, that we can buy
When you go
good
to the
quality
gym, you
food.
go to yoga, you have your training.
Yep.
That adds up, and other people probably can't afford that.
No, that's exactly right. In terms of gym and yoga and things like that, I think the other thing is that money gives you the ability to get help. So whether that's going out and seeking medical help, whether it's paying someone to do things for you, but you and I are the same in that we have the ability to be able to go and get people to help us, whether it's with Michael, whether it's in real estate, whether it's in business, whether it's in our private life. That ability is there, isn't it?
It is. Interestingly, if we're talking about getting help, let's just have a little quick sidetrack, because I know you and your role as business coach to some very successful business people, entrepreneurs in Mastermind Business Accelerator, help clients, your clients, our clients, help business people in service businesses and professional practices become more successful. And it's interesting, some businesses have got the money to seek coaches while other startups don't. But in fact, that's, in my mind, a bad thought. People say, I'm actually going to get my coach, I'm going to get help, I'm going to pay for help, when the business is better, when the conditions aren't as bad, when cash flow is better. Some people don't know when to ask for help. They get it wrong.
Yeah, they do. And I mean, the great irony about that, and you and I were just talking before about somebody you've been speaking to about, oh yes, I'll get some help in my business, when this gets better. The reality is, if they get the help, it'll get better a whole lot quicker.
Yes, it is. So having money allows you the ability to get help. Now, what do you do in Mastermind Business Accelerator? Let's have a shameless plug.
Yeah, sure. So what we do is we work with service business owners and professionals who have a business that largely they're a slave to. And the concept of the coaching program, which is both one-on-one, working with me, working with Caroline, spending some time with you, and group, because there's great collective momentum, the power of our group. I often say people come for the content and stay for the community that we create within Mastermind. But the whole idea is to help them to build a business that is way less reliant on them without negatively impacting the revenue that they're taking home.
Well, I know how it's helped me personally and the other directors at Metropole, and also our clients. So if you'd like to share the same business coach I do, I'll leave a link in the show notes. Go to metropolemastermind.com.au. And only this morning when I was walking with Lincoln, I was listening to you. I speak 3 or 4 times a day to you anyway, but I listened to your podcast as well. And in fact, it was so good yesterday, I actually had to send you that text message that I sent last night saying, I got some really, really good messages out of it. So what's the name of your podcast and where can people find it?
Well, anywhere where you get podcasts, Spotify,
wherever you're
Apple.
Listening to this, I guess.
Wherever you're listening to this one, absolutely. Mastermind for Business, the Mastermind for Business podcast. It's around about 20 to 30 minutes maximum. It's designed to be super practical, really simple things that you can listen to and then implement in your business straight away.
Well, it's short and sharp, and it actually has really good content that, okay, we've worked together for well over a decade, and while I've heard it before, it reminds me about things, and there's new stuff I've learned over and over again. I hear new stuff from you all the time, and I'm actually very impressed in the easy way you deliver it. So Mastermind for Business, wherever you're listening to podcasts, just put this on pause for a sec, go look for it and download it, follow it, and then we'll come back to having a talk about it, because what we were talking about is how money has helped me, and has helped me in my ability to get help, to get assistance, but also to help others and to give. And charity is very important. I know it's also important for you. And others will say, oh, look, I know it's easy for you. You're wealthy, so you can give. But it's also just how you feel about things. But I believe it's my obligation, once I've got to a particular level, to help others up as well. And that's, again, through the obvious one, like the masquerade ball that we're running for Hummingbird House in Brisbane on August the 26th. But it's not just for that. It's all the silent little things that you and I give as well to people, to charities who contact us.
And do you know what, Michael? The thing I think about having some money is that it's not about writing a check. So your charity extends beyond writing a check. Your charity extends to your time, to your mentorship. And the fact that you can afford to do that without thinking about, how am I going to pay the rent next week if I don't work, 80 hours this week? So charity doesn't have to be about writing big checks. Sometimes charity is just about being able to know that you can dedicate some time and you can give your time to other people. And sometimes there's nothing more valuable than that.
I think part of the reason I wanted to have this chat about does money buy happiness, Mark, is to make people feel okay about having money. And I'm going to share one more thing that money's helped me with in a moment. But I know people, because of what they've heard as a child, money doesn't buy happiness, doesn't grow on trees. There's some story about the camel going through an eye of the needle, and people feel guilty when they get to a particular level of wealth. And what I'm trying to show is that it's okay, that just being wealthy gives you opportunity to do all sorts of things for yourself and for other people. But I guess you've also noticed that in business, we've noticed that at Wealth Retreat, that people have a wealth thermostat, and if they get more money or get their business to a particular level, they sometimes sabotage themselves.
Yeah, they do. That self-sabotage, that imposter syndrome creeps in, and they start to feel like they don't deserve it, and they start to pull the business apart. And I think that's where a community becomes really relevant, Michael. People can sort of say to you, no, it's perfectly okay for you to be where you are. In fact, it's perfectly okay to want to move on so that you can afford to do all of the things that we've just spoken about, experiences and helping others and charity.
Sure. Well, that's one of the reasons people come to us at Metropole also, not just to get money in the short term for themselves, but many want to pass it on to future generations. And that's where we help our clients. We're much more than just buyer's agents. We give strategic property advice, not just to buy a property, but to give people intergenerational wealth. And through Kate and Ken with Metropole Wealth Advisory, we actually help them keep it and minimise their tax commitments and pass it on safely. But if we look at the last thing, I think if I look through the list of things money has given me, I'd like to say it's given me peace of mind. It's more comfortable. I remember Carl Richards, who's a financial planner who for quite some time we ran his articles on Property Update. He used to write for the New York Times and did little sketches on napkins, very clever little pictures. But he said something that much better than I could. He said, if you struggle with enough, more money won't solve the problem. It's the wrong tool for the job. That's because enough is not a money problem. It's an emotional problem. It's a fulfillment problem. We've given money a job that it was never intended to do. No amount of money will solve money insecurities. Insecurity is a state of mind, not a bottom line. No amount of money will change that. Some very wise words, Mark.
Yeah, very, very wise words, and things that I think that we can very easily take some learning from.
I guess when I looked at my journey over the years and becoming more comfortable with money, it really was tainted by my early childhood experiences. I didn't have a healthy relationship with money. I chased it too hard at the first half of my life. We came from a relatively poor background. I never went without. I always had food on the table, but my parents didn't have a car when all my friends' parents did. They went on holidays at Christmas time and we didn't. It was tough, and I sort of did notice the difference. But over the years, I studied the psychology of money, actually over the last couple of decades, and I've learned what money can do, what money can't do. I know now what I can spend it on, what I should spend it on, what I shouldn't, and how to get a more fulfilling life. So I hope this little chat has helped you, our listeners, understand that it's okay to look for money. And as I said a couple of times, it's going to be really important in certain areas of your life, like paying the school fees, like paying the mortgage, and it's not going to be at all important in other areas of your life.
No, 100% correct, Michael.
Well, as always, I love our monthly chats. If you'd like to share the same business coach as me, go to metropolemastermind.com.au. I'll leave a link in the show notes and just have a chat with Caroline and see if Mark could be the right person to be part of your team. And of course, Mastermind for Business Mark's podcast. And we'll catch up again real soon, Mark.
Yeah, look forward to it, mate.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In my mindset message today, I'd like to explain to you about a chat I had with one of my nephews who suddenly is taking an interest in property and business and success. And he said, what would you have liked to know years ago that would make things different today? Now, that's a great question. And as I discussed things with him, I realized that the topics I was talking about really wasn't as much about property or money as it was about mindset. So these are some of the things I mentioned to him that I wish I had known then. And the first one was to become the pilot of your life, because then everything is going to change. I remember things changed for me when I learned that my thoughts lead to my feelings lead to my actions, and my actions lead to my results. This meant that my inner world, my thoughts and my feelings, controlled my outer world, my actions and my results. The turning point was when I realized that I was responsible for all things, the good and the bad that had happened to me. I then became the pilot of my life and not just a passenger. I also realized that even if it's not true, I know I act differently and my results are better because I believe I'm responsible for everything that happened to me. The second lesson I told Daniel was that when I was young, no one taught me about this thing called the reticular activating system, that part of the brain that only lets you see in your surroundings what you focus on in your thoughts. It pretty much always helps you find what you're looking for. You know that story that if you were going to look for a white Toyota, you were going to buy a new car, all of a sudden on the street you'd see white Toyotas everywhere. It's the reticular activating system that looks for things that you focus on and blocks out other things. It pretty much always helps you find what you're looking for. It's your inbuilt GPS system. And so what I learned, and I would have liked to know it earlier in life, was the importance of setting goals and regularly reviewing them, because it's one way to keep your focus. It keeps you focused on what's important and helps you take actions that are going to move you closer towards where you want to go. The other lesson I told him was that your attitude changes your reality. It's that old glass half full or glass empty story. When things happen in life, things that we don't like, we can either choose to see them as a problem or as a solution waiting to be discovered. Now, to be blunt, it took me quite some time in my life to discover that if you change your attitude, you can actually change your reality. When you have a positive attitude instead of a negative one, you start to see things and viewpoints that were invisible before. At the moment, there's lots of challenges going on in the world, in life, but there always seem to be. But the optimistic people do much, much better in life in general than the pessimists. Another lesson I told him was the importance of giving. You've got to give to receive. As children, we're told that the joy is in giving rather than receiving. But as adults, for many of us, life becomes about what we can get out of somebody or something. However, if you want to increase the value you receive, look, it could be money, love, kindness, opportunities. You've got to increase the value that you give, because over time, what you get is in proportion to what you give out. While it would be nice to get something for nothing, over the years I learned that seldom happens. Another lesson I taught him was to be proactive rather than reactive. There seems to be three types of people out there: those who make things happen, those who watch what happens, and then there's those who sit around and say, hey, well, what just happened? Be in the first group. Be in that group of people who make things happen, and always be on the lookout for opportunity. Two more lessons I gave him that I'd like to share with you. One is make your time count. How often have you heard people say time flies? Well, indeed it does, so use it wisely. Just as you're careful about how and where you invest your money, you should be careful about how you invest your time. Remember the Pareto principle, that 80-20 rule? It says that 80% of the value we receive comes from 20% of what we do with our time. So what things do you do? What do you spend your time doing that takes a lot of energy yet delivers few results? Cut those out and use your time wisely. Of course, that also means don't waste your time worrying, because most things you're worrying about are never going to happen. They're just monsters in your mind. If they do happen, they're most likely not going to be as bad as you expected. So now when you're confronted with a challenge, what you should do is put things in perspective. What I ask myself is, what's the worst that could happen? What's the best possible outcome? And what's the most likely thing that's going to happen? This means you shouldn't take things too seriously, because that which seems like a really big problem today, you may not even remember in 5 years' time. So lighten up a little bit. But the other lesson I taught him was mistakes mean growth. Sometimes negative experiences, mistakes and failures can be an even better way of achieving success, because they teach you something that another win, another success probably wouldn't teach you. However, we're so driven with getting things right that we fail to see the value when things go wrong. Instead, we spend our time wishing we'd done it differently or not doing anything because we're scared of having a mistake. So if things go wrong, learn from your mistakes is what I explained to him. Make it count. Do things differently next time. What I didn't tell him at the time, but I would have liked to, was one thing I'm going to share with you now, and that's don't compare yourself to others. That's one of the things I would have liked to know early too, because when you compare yourself to others, you let the outside world control how you feel about yourself. Clearly, with social media now and seeing everybody's what they eat and what they do and their cars and their lifestyle, it makes some people feel a little bit jealous. Remember, you're seeing people's highlight reels, not all the bits on the cutting room floor. So instead of trying to compare yourself with other people, strive to be the best that you can be and look at how far you've come, what you've achieved, what you've accomplished. And they're the lessons that I would have liked to know many years ago. And if I've shared them with you and now you're aware of those, maybe it will help you just get that bit of success a little bit sooner. Well, thanks for spending the last little while with me, and I hope you got some benefit from this show. If you did, and you know somebody else who'd also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. There's a share button on every podcast app. On Apple Podcasts, there's 3 little buttons down the bottom. Press it and share it, or just tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. I hope you're going to be doing them a favour, and you'll definitely be doing me a favour and helping me in my quest to make as many people as possible financially literate. Now, there's ways of catching up with me between these shows. Just look for Michael Yardney on social media, or why not join my private Facebook group? Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group. And I have a way of saying thank you to you for subscribing to this podcast. Go to podcastbonus.com.au. There'll be a link in the show notes, podcastbonus.com.au, where you can get a bunch of ebooks and reports. My way of saying thank you. And when you've got time, why not listen to some of the old podcasts? There's individual lessons in each of those that I think would be helpful for you. I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?